Welcome, Buff fans, to our game preview. And Adam, happy Thanksgiving to you, and happy Thanksgiving to Buff fans out there. And I know you started your day. We're doing this on Thanksgiving Day, but you started the day with a turkey trot. So how was that this morning?
It was great. I was telling you that it was no wind, the sun was out, so it was like 28 degrees. But that's the thing about Colorado, and it's something that I feel like we need to incorporate more into the forecast is okay, how much sun is going to be out and how much wind is there going to be? Because it can be 50 degrees here and pretty darn cold, or it can be
Yeah.
30 degrees and actually not that bad. So we lucked out, and yeah, I did it with our one of our dogs that went nuts, so it went back to the car midway through the race. So I ended up having to run a lot more than I needed to just to get rid of this damn dog during the race. But I still love Punchy. She's a dog, so she won't listen to this and take offense. But it was really
Right.
annoying. I felt like my shoulders were going to get pulled out of my socket because she wanted to win this race so bad. But after I dropped her off, our youngest and I finished, and it was fun. And it's called Huffing for Stuffing, and you get to the finish line and they hand you some stuffing.
There you go. I like that. I might have to do that next year. I don't want to do the huffing, but I want the stuffing. So, yeah, I took my son to play a turkey bowl this morning, and um,
Nice.
I didn't play because I have too much work I have to get done, and so, but he went and played and had a good time out there. So I know it was cold. Certainly football weather. I don't know if it's running weather as much, but it was certainly football weather, and it's going to be chilly at 10 a.m. on Friday. We know that. Hopefully not snowy, but 10 a.m. on Friday when the Buffs kick off against Oklahoma State, and um, it should be a good game. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to just one last chance to see Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter at Folsom Field. And you and I, and several Buff fans I know will travel to a bowl game. Maybe there's a Big 12 title game next week, but for a lot of fans, this will be their last chance to see those two, and that alone makes Friday, a lot of fun for people.
And I was talking about this on a podcast this week, Brian, is that it's kind of crazy in this portal era where these guys that are going to be walk on senior day primarily have only been on campus for a year or two, but
Mhm.
uh, and I think it's partly a credit to them for the success they've had and the stamp they've put on this program that it kind of feels like a genuine senior day. To think about a lot of these names, and you've got to just start going down the list because there's so many of them. You go on to guys like Cameron Silman Craig and Lavonta Bentley. They have really endeared themselves to Colorado fans in a short period of time. So I know this new era of college football is tough for a lot of those that have been around a long time and kind of enjoyed the student athlete experience kind of being a little bit different back in the day and guys not jumping school so much, but you still kind of have that connection, I feel like, with this team.
Yeah, and honestly, you have to give a lot of credit to Deion Sanders Jr. and Darius Sanders and Uncle Neely for that because with the content they put out on their channels, that's allowed fans to feel like they've gotten to know those players quite a bit, because you see the personalities of these players, maybe more so than we've gotten to see in the past. And, you know, it's different, in the past, like we often reference the 2016 team. I know some fans don't want to hear it, but I don't care. The 2016 team, one of the endearing things about that group was that they were Buffs for 4 or 5 years together. And so they grew up as Buffs and fans got to know them over a period of 4 or 5 years. And this is different, but you get to know them over social media a little bit. And I think there's a lot of fans that probably feel like they know LeJohntay Wester, even though he's only been here since January, because they've seen him so much on social media. And Shador, it's almost like he's been here forever because of how much content we've seen on Shador Sanders in Colorado uniform. It's interesting to think back. It wasn't even 2 years ago. I mean, I think next week will be 2 years that Deion Sanders has his introductory press conference, and he has Shador stand up, and he's wearing the goat sweatshirt, and he says, "Well, that's your quarterback," And now here it is. It was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And 2 years later, it's like, oh, our quarterback's gonna be gone. It's crazy that that went by so fast. But Friday is gonna be a celebratory day. We'll see how the football game turns out, but it's gonna be it should be a celebratory day because not only have Buff fans gotten to know these guys, but look, Travis and Shador are two of the best players to ever come through Folsom Field.
Yeah, no question. And I think it's good that it's going to be. kind of the coldest home game all season on senior day, because you're going to have just that little extra boost. Because Brian, they don't practice a whole lot outside when the weather's not great. So
Right.
they're going to kind of need that adrenaline in senior day to get them going. And I don't think that's going to be a huge factor, because it's not like it's going to be blizzard conditions or anything. And you start running, like, again, comparing CU football to my turkey trot this morning. You start running a little bit, and you get warmed up pretty quick. So that's going to be incredible. I A lot of times I'll go down to the field pretty early and then come up and try to do some personnel stuff with my binoculars. But I think I might just spend a little more time down on the field pregame tomorrow to
Yeah.
see Travis Hunter pulling some of those one-armed catches in the end zone from Shador. Because, yeah, like you said, the opportunities, fortunately for us, we're going to get a chance to see him. But the folks that only are going to watch this team at Folsom Field, this will be the last opportunity. So, yeah, I think we'll get into our score predictions later. But I
Yeah.
really see, especially last week, really fueling this team to a dominant performance.
Well, no offense to you, but I hope the Buffs are more like Punchy than you tomorrow. If you're gonna use the turkey trot
Well,
analogy.
they're going to get some personal foul penalties then, if that's the case.
Well, we
She
know
was
that's
lunging at other dogs, and it was like, you got to chill out.
well, we do know that's probably going to happen. I mean, that's one thing with this team that they're going to get one of those a game, maybe two. So, but
But Brian, real quick, like the opposing team has been penalized more against Colorado than any team in the Big 12. So
yeah,
let's not like put this on CU. This is other teams
right,
trying to instigate a lot of cases. And don't get me wrong, not every personal foul against Colorado is the other team
right.
instigating it, but we've seen that quite a bit this year.
We have, and honestly, some of those personal fouls are they're just celebrating and getting a little too,
Yeah.
I guess, feeling themselves using the Coach Prime word, on the celebration and getting a penalty for that. And so I wasn't knocking them at all. I'm just saying if they're aggressive like Punchy, then you want to see that out of the Buffs on Friday. And this is a game you alluded to it coming off of last week, and there's kind of two ways you can go off of a game like that. If you're the Buffs, that can either really deflate you based on not only the result, but what it meant. Obviously it took uh, the control out of the Buffs' hands. I mean, they no longer control their destiny. They had it right in front of them. Coach Prime is. He mentioned to us. He also was watching his show with Romy Bean. He mentioned to her as well. He said that one's taken longer to flush because we knew we had it, and you could sense that, right? And it was a lost opportunity. And Coach Prime after the game, he was like, "We had an opportunity, we fumbled it." And so there's two ways you can go with that, Adam. And one is you can be deflated. The other is you can come out fired up and like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go play our best game because we still have a shot. And I think that's the best we're going to get.
I think there's a huge difference between, the loss against Stanford last year, where you're really shell shocked
Yeah.
as a
Mhm.
program, because it was so shocking. And last Saturday at Kansas State, where, frankly, at times they just got their butts kicked. And that was something that no one really had answers for post game or even since then. But it was
Mhm.
just a mentality of that Kansas State wanted, or Kansas wanted it more than Colorado did in that game. So I think it's different. I think you come back so much more fired up when you have a result like with the Jayhawks versus blowing this huge lead, and you're like, you're you're having a hard time flushing it because it should have been a win.
Yeah.
Whereas last week, you have to accept that was an L. You got to take that L, but just use that as fuel. At least that's as somebody covering college football for a long time. It seems like there's differences in the way teams generally take losses, but then there's also the mental makeup of this team is better than the team last year. So again, yeah, I know people hate us comparing to last year, but I think it's a good comparison in terms of I felt like last week was a loss that's going to catapult this team for however many games I have left.
Yeah.
Whereas last year we were kind of scratching our head, just wondering how they were going to bounce back from that.
Well, and frankly, we can look back even earlier this year. I mean, this is their third loss, so we have a sample size of what they do after losses, and you know, after the Nebraska loss, they did not look good that night, right? The first half, especially, it looked really bad, and there was a lot of talk of, boy, what is this season going to look like at this point? You have to go up to Fort Collins now. If you lose that, this is going to be a long year, and they responded with a really dominant performance up in Fort Collins, and then you lose the one to K-State that they're still kicking themselves over, because they thought they had it. Well, how'd they respond to that? They won the next four, each of them by at least 11 points. I mean, they blew out everybody during that stretch. So they responded to losses really well. And yes, I think the comparison to last year is valid because they didn't respond to losses very well last year. And this year they have. And so I expect them to. One difference too, Adam, is that they were playing a KU team that we talked about going into last week was hot. They had beaten two straight ranked opponents. They were playing much better than their record. Well, now they're playing an Oklahoma State team that's just not. They've lost 8 in a row, and they got some things going offensively last week against another bad defense, but 8 in a row, and they've got really nothing to play for. Kansas had a ton to play for last week, bowl eligibility and things like that, and Oklahoma State has nothing to play for, and so I think it's a different situation this week.
Yeah, I can't remember a team's season result being more shocking than Oklahoma State's. This is a football
Yeah,
team that returned all 11 offensive starters. They had the pieces that had already proven to be really good. And was Ollie Gordon a preseason All-American or just preseason All Big 12?
no, he's preseason All-American. I mean, he won the Doak Walker last
Yeah.
year, so
To see him averaging a yard less than a half per carry
mhm.
with the same pieces around you is really shocking. And I know defensively, it really hurt them, early in the season when they lost their All-American linebacker, Colin Oliver.
Yeah.
It. I was talking with our Oklahoma State publisher, and he said that Colin Oliver was kind of the guy they built the defense around. So it makes a little bit more sense of why that side of the ball is struggling a little bit more. But Brent, I actually went against the grain and had Oklahoma State over Utah as my preseason Big 12 media pick, and so couldn't have been more wrong there. And I don't think anybody saw this really coming for them.
Yeah, and losing Oliver is big, but I mean, they had 10 returning starters on defense this year. One of their only big losses in the portal was DJ McKinney, who came here. And I'm with you. Like I actually picked Utah in the media poll, but it was kind of one of those things like, oh, this is due tomorrow. Well, let's get this done. And the more I looked into, did a deeper dive into the opponents and everything, I was like, man, I think Oklahoma State's going to win this conference. And they were such an anomaly in today's college football with having everybody back, including the Doak Walker Award winner. Their quarterback was back, and Mike Gundy, you just pencil him in for a bowl game every year,
Yeah.
and then from there, where do they go? I mean, they were in the Big 12 title game a year ago, and have almost everybody back, and so yeah, it's stunning. I can't believe what's happened to them this year, and going back and watching a lot of their games this week, it's like it's snowballed for them. I mean, they've gotten blown out a lot of times too. It's not like the other thing about Kansas is that Kansas was losing one score games. Oklahoma State's not. I mean, they had the tough one to BYU a few weeks ago where they had the lead late and BYU came back and won, but they've been blown out a lot too. So it's really kind of a shocking season that Oklahoma State's had. And their starting quarterback from last year, Alan Bowman, has started most of the year this year, but he's been benched and they're now on their third starting quarterback, and he's a true freshman. So it's going to be interesting to see what Oklahoma State team shows up on Friday.
My low Key Smith. I That is not an easy one to pronounce. The freshman quarterback that started for them. He actually took an unofficial visit to CU for the first elite underclassmen weekend that the Buffs ever did under Coach Prime.
Yeah.
At that point, they brought in so many kids for that week. And I think since then they've tailored it more to smaller groups because it's just hard to show that many guys a lot of attention. But that's somebody that was in Boulder, so he's familiar with the layout here. I think it helps Colorado, though. He's a true freshman. He had a good performance against the worst defense in the Big 12 in Texas Tech last week.
Mhm.
So, yeah, he had over 300 yards, but he's also put some tape out there now. So,
Yeah.
Colorado kind of has a little bit more familiarity with him. So yeah, it could be a rough day for him because you can disguise things for freshmen until they really figure it out. And it's almost like a baseball player that comes out there and hits 3 home runs his first game, and then they figure out, okay, well, you got to put it on the edge in this corner with this pitch, and he can't hit it there.
Yeah.
Maybe just having at least a full game of film with Smith will kind of give them a little bit an ability to attack him better.
Yeah, and he also had that start came at home last week, and it'll be different on the road. And even Mike Gundy this week was saying, yeah, that a lot of that surprised me last week because we didn't know what he could do if you put him in a game situation. This is gonna be a different game situation where it's a hostile environment against a much better team, I think, than what he saw last week. Especially a much better defense. I think at least the defense we saw the first 10 games out of Colorado was much better than what we saw last week. Um, Let me go there because what do you expect out of this defense? I think they're going to bounce back. I think that group, I've seen too much good out of that defense to think that what they were last week is what they are.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of read into what Coach Prime said about maybe some guys are reading their press clippings, I mean, that was kind of tailored more towards the defensive guys, right? In, in,
I
in
think
that
so.
post
Yeah.
game press conference.
Yeah.
And so now you're going to have a complete different mindset. And, some guys playing in their last home game, quite a few, especially on that defensive line at linebacker, at safety. Yeah, I'd be shocked. I was shocked. I guess I would say I was very, very surprised at their performance
Mhm.
in Kansas City last Saturday. I'd be shocked if that happens again.
Yeah. So would I, especially against Oklahoma State. And Ollie Gordon's a good back. As disappointing of a season as he's had by his standards, he's still a good back, and he's 130 yards away from 1,000. I would guess that that's going to be a big thing for him. It's probably going to be a big thing when Oklahoma State has nothing else to play for. It's a feather in the cap of the program to get him 1,000 yards, and so I think that that's probably going to be an emphasis of theirs. Um, I'm guessing the Buffs know that because they knew going into Texas Tech a few weeks ago that Taj Brooks was a certain amount of yards away from the school record there, and they didn't want him to get it. So I'm sure they're aware of where Ollie Gordon is. They're going to want to stop that, and um, I expect them to be better. And would guess they learned from last week that you better wrap up on your tackles. And frankly, if you stop him and you can get after the quarterback a little bit, I think it's a recipe for success for the Buffs.
Stop him, you're going to win this game by a
Yeah,
very wide margin. I
right.
don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah. So are you expecting um I mean, who are you expecting defensively to kind of step up and lead the charge in that? I mean, Cam Summer-Craig's been the guy most of the year. He did not have his best game last year. Is he the guy that you want to see lead this thing, or does it need to be a collective effort?
Yeah, I mean, I know the safeties have gotten some flack after last week's game, but the those big plays shouldn't have been getting into their backyard, into their
Yeah.
area so many times. And so it's the front that's going to have a different mentality, and I think they will. And knowing that Oklahoma State's going to want to run the football, that should be a pretty motivated group. I mean, you've got what was it, four seniors on the defensive line. They're going to be playing in their last home game on Saturday. You got Shane Cokes, Chidoze Wankwo. You've got BJ Green's going to be playing his last game. So you've got some guys that are going to want to go
Ray,
out on a high note.
yeah, Rayon
Graham Buell,
Buell,
he's been hurt. Yeah,
he
it's
has
been
been
unfortunate
playing,
with
but
him.
he's a senior.
Do we
Um,
know if Torian Carter is eligible for a medical?
I
I saw
don't know
him
about
break down
that.
the team huddle the other day, and seems like a pretty popular guy on the team.
I would think he is, and they've been pretty lenient with those things in the NCAA, so I would guess he is, but I don't know for sure on that one. And
It could be good to see TC back because that would be a huge. I mean, that would be
yeah,
like landing a pretty darn good transfer portal defensive
right.
lineman.
Yeah. If you can get that. And to your point earlier, Shiloh Sanders made 13 tackles last week. He was he was blasted quite a bit for maybe some of the ones he missed, but he made quite a few tackles. And um, in his defense a little bit is that he and you kind of alluded to this, he hasn't had to make those tackles all year because the front seven's been so good. Um, the safeties have not led the team in tackles a ton this year because the front seven's been so good. And last week, they put so much on the safeties. I agree with you. The front seven has to step up. It'll be interesting to get Shane Cokes back too. He's missed 3 games, but now you lose Amari McNeil. It's unfortunate you don't get both those guys together, but I imagine we'll get a keyed up Shane Cokes because not only is it his last game at home, but he's been out for almost a month. So I imagine you're going to get a keyed up Shane Cokes.
Before he goes off to rule the world with his Ivy League degree. Yeah,
That's right.
one last performance. And he might end up on a practice squad or have a
Yeah.
chance at an NFL team because he certainly got all the intangibles in terms of his attitude, work ethic, and he's definitely a strong guy in the weight room. So maybe this won't be the end of his football career, and we'll get to see more of him. But yeah, that should be a pretty motivated group. It is funny going to your point about kind of the flack that the safeties got last week of over the time covering the Buffs. Isn't it crazy how much the fans love the safeties when the front plays well and they hate them when they don't? I mean, that's what
Right.
it comes down to a lot of the
Right.
time,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, Shiloh, I think would be the first to tell you he hasn't played perfect football this year, but he's somebody that the previous 2 weeks kind of put the clincher on the football game because of his playmaking ability.
Right. And overall, I think Shiloh's made some big plays in a Buffs uniform, and so I Buff fans I assume will miss him as well. Even though, yes, there were a couple of missed tackles, but the guy did make 13 of them last week, and so we'll see what happens this week. As far as the Buffs run game, we talked about it in an earlier video this week, but they've got to run the football this week, even without Isaiah, don't they? I mean, Oklahoma State is last in the conference. They're 133rd out of 134 teams in the country against the run, but the Buffs are 134th rushing offense. So something's got to give there, right?
If Micah Welch's hamstring feels great when he wakes up on Friday, please 20 carries, Brian. Just give him 20 carries. I just want to see what that looks like. And
That's a lot to ask for.
don't get me wrong. Okay, can
15?
I 15? I would take
Okay.
15.
All right.
Wouldn't you be curious to see what that would look like?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would
And,
love to
and
see it.
yeah, and when it's third and short, I'm fine. Okay, Dallin Hayden's your number two.
Yeah.
You want to get him involved somehow and give him another chance to make some plays. That's fine. If it's third and short or fourth and short, that's not your guy for that situation.
Yeah.
And I understand that the third down play to his defense last week in Kansas City, I don't think there's any back in the country that it would have gotten that first down.
Right.
The
Yeah.
the blocking was horrible, but the fourth down play that with some grit and determination that was possible to get.
Yeah.
So I think Michael Welch is a kid that can do that.
Question for you, because our buddy Matt Smith and I were debating this week. Even without Isaiah, do the Buffs get 100 yards rushing?
Yes, against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
because I'm picking a blowout victory here, so that
Yeah.
factors into it as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Isaiah and Dallin are more than capable. We're going to see Shador, I think, get a few runs and hopefully Charlie Offerdahl. I would love to see Charlie getting in there because that means things are going well for the offense, I think. But I'd love to see Charlie get in there and get in the mix. And look, he's had one of the biggest runs of the season. The last time I think it was the last time they were over 100 was Arizona the last time they were over 100? I think so.
The following week as well. They were,
Okay. Was it 2 weeks in a
yeah.
row? Well, I know at Arizona he ran well at the end of the game to kind of put it away. I definitely think they'll be over 100 yards, and that's usually a key, right? If they're over 100, they win the game. What offensively, just have some fun here. What do you think is going to happen there? Like, is Shador's mindset? I know his mindset is going to be win the football game, but are they going to look to get Travis a bunch of stats, and say, let's get him the ball more, maybe more so than most weeks, so we can pump up those stats a little bit. If Jimmy's healthy, I think they're going to want to force him a little bit. What do they do offensively with the passing game, do you think?
I mean, I don't feel like they've really ever forced the ball to Travis Hunter. Like we joke about the fact that
Force
he's
is
a
a bad word. Yeah, force is a bad word. I don't
yeah,
think they
he's like a
forced it,
he's
but
like a unicorn,
yeah,
or you could say a real life cheat code. So
yeah,
you want you want to get that player involved. We have seen a couple times late in games that Coach Prime has flat out admitted in post game press conference, yeah, we're like trying to get Travis to 100 or
yeah,
this player to 100. So and I know that drives people crazy. Um, there's a reason Coach Prime gets really talented players to come to Boulder because he knows what those players want, and so
right.
you got to kind of factor that into it a little bit
Mhm.
too. Um, so yeah, I don't. There have been a couple times this year, Brian, that you're like, what are they doing? Why are
Yeah,
they doing this right now? Just run the clock out. But when you look at the overall success of this program, it's kind of like uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You're kind of nitpicking,
yeah,
which in football terms you shouldn't say that not having perfect time management at the end is nitpicking, but the overall grand scheme of things with Colorado kind of feels like it is a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, if there's a certain number they're trying to get to it late in the game, I think we've seen that they're trying to do that. But you've got Will Shepherd, LeJohntay Wester, and Jimmy Horn playing in their last home game. I don't think that they're going to just be focused on Travis, and it helps. I think that he has gotten such favorable odds now for the Heisman Trophy that a lot of folks almost think he's a lock at this point. So
Yeah.
I don't think need anything crazy out of him other than just a typical Travis Hunter game. And when we go to New York in a few weeks, he'll be the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah. I tend to think this is a game that they're not going to really be going into the fourth quarter saying we need to get Travis his 100 because he's already going to have it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is a game that it probably won't be too difficult to get him his 100 yards. But uh, what I would love to see is I hope Jimmy's healthy because Jimmy deserves a game. And they want to give him the ball because they talked about. I mean, Texas Tech, the game he got hurt. Shador flat out said there was a lot in the game plan for him because he needs a game. He needs his game, and so they're wanting to get him one of those games. So if Jimmy's out there, I think you can bet that he's going to get the ball.
Well, he's
Uh,
kind of like LeJohntay in the sense that like he creates with his speed such issues for defense when you
yeah.
have defenders that take an angle that typically is perfect and you get Jimmy Horn and LeJohntay Wester that extend that an extra 5'10" or even to a house call. So that's why and Jimmy has in snippets this season when he's been healthy been really really impressive. We just
Yeah.
unfortunately haven't seen him healthy a whole lot.
Yeah, well, hopefully we see a Jimmy game this week. We know we're going to see a Travis game. We're going to see a Shador game, and Shador, he's 40 yards away from the single season passing record, so I imagine he'll get that very quickly in this game as well. And yeah, prediction time. What do you think?
Yeah, I respect Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy, but not the team that's coming out to Boulder tomorrow to play the Buffs. It just has been a really, really rough season, and it's going to be interesting to see what the future of that program looks like. It sounds like Mike Gundy is definitely going to be back, and he has no plans to retire. But it sounds like there's going to be a lot of pressure for him to make changes at the coordinator positions. Again, such a bad look when you return all that talent and you have the season that they have. And maybe early in the game, you see some fight out of those guys, but I think Colorado will, for the first time, Brian, have a true start to this game that kind of allows them to play ahead the whole way. And I see them winning this game 45-17. I think that's probably the biggest spread I picked for a game this season. I really do think this is going to be an easy victory for the Buffaloes, as long as they have the mentality that we talked about that we expect them to have.
Yeah, I'm right with you, and I think it's the biggest spread I've picked, and I've got 45-20. I think it should be an easy one. I think that I don't know if a fast start is essential, but I think a fast start would bury Oklahoma State. And so, in that regard, it's probably essential. Get on them early because I think in a lot of ways, Oklahoma State's probably turned the page to next week or to next year. And you have to wonder how motivated they are in a season that is lost to go on the road Thanksgiving week and try to play a football game. I wonder how motivated they are. We'll find out on Friday. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this team does on Friday because then Saturday, it's a lot of TV watching, right? And figuring out,
Yeah.
all right, are the dominoes going to fall? Because the Buffs, if they can take care of their business, they'll be done by 1 p.m. on Friday. But then they got to wait more than 24 hours to see are those other dominoes going to fall.
So best case scenario, Big 12 championship game.
Hmm.
Is it safe to say worst case scenario, which is crazy to say, is the Holiday Bowl at this point
I
for the
think so.
Buffs?
I think so because I think that and most yeah, and in between that,
That's
probably the
not a
most
bad worst case scenario. I would not
no, it's
mind
not.
traveling out to San
I was
Diego.
gonna say perspective on worst case scenario because um you would have to say holiday worst case based on the pecking order of the selections. In between that though, I think the most likely scenario is they go to the Alamo Bowl. And that's the one that I don't want because we've covered two bowl games and it's been the Alamo both times, and so I'd love
And
to
that's
go
the
to
last
something
time
different.
Colorado has played Oklahoma State
Right.
is in the Alamo Bowl in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the 46th meeting between the two programs, but that was the last one.
Yeah. And by the way, here's a good stat for you. Okay. Since 1989, the Buffs are 11-0 versus unranked Oklahoma State teams and 0-5 against ranked Oklahoma State teams. So that pattern suggests that they're going to win this game. And so I think they do. But yeah, I mean, the worst case is probably the Holiday Bowl. I can't imagine that, you know, the Alamo could pass on the Buffs only because they wouldn't want to put a CU versus K-State rematch. But there's no way the Holidays pass on them too, right?
Would
Especially,
Kansas State be the most likely to end there if they win this weekend over Iowa
I
State?
think so because
Okay.
then they would be ahead of Iowa State in the standings, and it would be probably BYU and Kansas State would be the top two choices. It could be BYU, but especially if BYU goes to the title game and wins it, then Kansas State would probably be it for sure. So,
Okay.
but yeah, and for those, a reminder to those real quick, for the Buffs to get to the title game, you got to win, and you need two out of the three, Arizona State, BYU, or Iowa State to lose. The other scenario would be you win, BYU loses, and Texas Tech beats, I think it's West Virginia, and then you get it on a tiebreaker. So there's a path. It's just, yeah, we'll see in San Antonio.
The Big 12 website created a tiebreaker central that you can follow along with. It's kind of funny. That just I like that they're embracing the parity in this conference because we knew that was
Yeah,
going to be the case this season. We definitely didn't expect Oklahoma State to be defeated in conference play going into the regular season finale. You couldn't have predicted Utah's issues because of
yeah,
the injuries, but a lot of the rest of it's been kind of like, yeah, we kind of expected this to be a conference that's going to cannibalize itself and kind of come down to the last weekend. And so having four teams tied at the lead going into the final week is pretty fitting for this conference.
yeah. It's an insane year because you picked Oklahoma State to win the conference. I know Utah was projected number one. I actually again thought that the Oklahoma State would win it. Here they are, the worst team in the conference, and Arizona State was picked to be the worst team in the conference. And I think right now you would say they're the best team in the conference right now. So, um, and it's the portal era though because I mean you look at the Big Ten. Indiana was picked 17th in the Big Ten, and here they are. I know they just lost, but they're a top 10 team in the country. So the portal era, you never know what's going to happen, but makes it fun, I guess.
Well, it's different.
Yeah,
It's getting used to how it's different, and it's still until they figure out the guidelines for NIL, it's going to continue to be
yeah,
really tough for the old school college football fans to fully embrace the sport. But I think there will be a day where that gets a little settled down, and especially because a lot of these schools are not getting the return on the investment that they spent on NIL, and so you're still seeing a lot of parity, even despite the fact that there really shouldn't be in this new era,
yeah,
because it's tough to project, especially you're dealing with 18 to 22-year olds. It's hard to project how they're going to be a year or two from now and throw a bunch of money at them. So it's got to get figured out. I think conference realignment at some point. I hope it's in our lifetime, Brian, where like they figure out the regionality of the sport is actually important. It doesn't
yeah,
look like that's going to happen anytime soon, but the more time you have USC and UCLA and Stanford and Cal sending their Olympic teams across the country, I think the more kind of just frustration there's going to be with that. So long term, it's kind of tough to say when this is all going to shake out, but you get to the game. We're going to get to the game early tomorrow. You soak in the atmosphere. They kick the ball off. It's still same thing that we've always loved.
yeah. And the nice thing for us and for Buff fans, hopefully, is you do get one of those regional games. This is an old school rivalry matchup. They were conference rivals for a long time. It's gonna be fun seeing Oklahoma State against CU again in Boulder. They haven't been in Boulder in a long time, and I'm glad it's not in the Alamo Bowl this time. So be looking forward to seeing Oklahoma State, and I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning.
Sounds good, Brian. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too, and happy Thanksgiving to all Buff fans out there.